Lunar Abyss has to be one of the most interesting games I have played in a long time. Lunar Abyss is a bullet hell FPS that has some really interesting boss fights, both with interesting stories behind them, but also just, quite frankly, fun fights. Fights that combine mechanics with you moving around quite well. It's also a game where you will be dodging through hordes and hordes of bullets. Your screen will at times be completely taken up by different particle effects. It's also a game that has a lot of mystery. It takes place 200 years after a new moon appeared above Earth that completely changed the gravitational pull of the Earth, and of course that means fucking up our oceans and whatnot, but a bunch of natural disaster following. However, you are exploring the colonies that were built on that new moon after they have already passed. Something happened up there. And that is sort of the hook of the game. That is where they're really getting you. And honestly, it is genuinely super interesting, especially because the designs of just about every enemy and every NPC you find are grotesque, weird, and like kind of fucked, man. I don't know how else to put it. But as much as I want to make this into a happy video about Lunar Abyss, I can't, because the entire development team behind Lunar Abyss was laid off a month after launch. After the grueling 7-year development cycle that was Lunar Abyss, they have released 2 demos for the game in that time, and quite frankly I think it is such a shame. On top of that, there's been a really weird narrative spun about how the game got cancelled and the developers got like laid off because the game is woke, and I'd like to challenge that just a little bit today. But before we get into any of that, let's talk a little bit about Lunar Abyss. Let's start at what you will actually be doing in Lunar Abyss. Combat in Lunar Abyss is a bit strange, mainly because it's a first-person bullet hell. So the developer decided, because most of your mental load is probably gonna be on dodging and avoiding damage, to give you complete auto-aim. Now you can in theory just not use the auto-aim, but every time you hold your right click button, it will automatically aim at whatever enemy your like reticle is near. So if you are near an enemy and you just hold the right click button, it will automatically hone in on that enemy. And that is because Lunar Abyss is very fast paced, again because it's a bullet hell. So you'll be dodging around a bunch of bullets, and you'll be holding your right click button, shooting a couple of times. Then your finisher will proc, which you unlock slightly later in the story, where you absorb an enemy so you can like get some health back, or later you can use them as a living bomb, which is about as cool as it sounds. So you like are doing all of these things, and then I think the thought process would be that you might not have had the time to aim or just felt better like that, and I will agree, it feels pretty damn good. You see, Lunar Abyss, even though it has a pretty, I'd say, weird combat system for a first-person shooter, doesn't feel bad to play. Sure, you might be auto-aiming all the time, but the gunplay itself, the way that the guns feel to shoot, is universally good in my opinion. It also brings variety, because the different enemies have different shields which are weak to different guns. And when I say weak, I mean you cannot kill them or damage them without using that gun. So it's a constant fest of pressing your 1 to 4 button to hit the right weapon at the right time to kill the right enemy. Now that might sound overly complicated, but it really isn't when you get into the rhythm of things. And I think that is largely carried by the auto aim. You can pretty much perform everything else because you don't have to worry about where your reticle is at any given time. So you're just zooming across the map, absorbing enemies, switching between different weapons to do the maximum amount of damage, because every gun has a charge meter. Essentially, once you've shot it enough, you just can't shoot that gun anymore for a little bit. And then as it's cooling down, you swap to the next one, and so on and so forth. Or maybe you're playing it like me, where I am swapping to them after 1 or 2 shots to like maximize the cooldown time. Now, the gunplay in Lunar Abyss wouldn't be nearly as good as it is if it wasn't for the fact that you get some pretty cool weapons. The very first of which is a scout rifle that fires at a rapid pace. It has the longest overcharge meter of any weapon in the game, and as you go through the game you'll find different upgrades for it. Most of them either increase damage or makes it shoot faster. There are 2, so pretty self-explanatory. It's gonna make it shoot fast and do more damage. That's it. However, it does get the job done, and you will often find yourself swapping back to it as other weapons are either on cooldown or you just don't need to pull out the big guns for small enemies, as the Scout does plenty of damage enough. The second weapon you unlock is the Shield Breaker. The Shield Breaker is, to put it lightly, your shotgun. It can be used to break through the blue walls surrounding certain doors. It's also going to be used to break certain enemies' shields. And other than that, it just does a fuck ton of damage. It does have a range though. At some point it just fizzles out and it doesn't do any damage. However, shot at a decent to optimal range, which I'll put as being like 10-20 meters ish away from you, you can do a fuck ton of damage with the Shield Breaker. It also has upgrades that, as an example, increase its range and make it do more damage, but overall it's really cool. It also shoots in a cross pattern, which I just find to be neat. The third weapon you unlock is the Monarch's Lance. The Monarch's Lance is essentially your sniper rifle. It is a single shot at a time heavy fire rifle that does a shit ton of damage. You can shoot it roughly 3 times before it goes into overcharge, but it does a shit ton of damage and it can be used to break the purple shields. Now the purple shields on enemies are the ones that will sometimes go gray, where you just can't damage it at all, but then when it's purple you can break the shield and then you can either swap to another weapon or completely annihilate the enemy with Monarch's Lance. It is one of the best weapons you have in your arsenal for the majority of the game. It just does a crazy amount of damage. It's incredibly good for swapping, as you can shoot 1 bullet with it, then swap to the Shield Breaker, shoot 1 bullet with that, then back to a Scout Rifle, shoot that a couple of times to then swap back to Monarch's Lance, shoot it either once or twice, then the Shield Breaker and then the Scout Rifle. You can sort of cycle through them to get the most out of your uptime on your weapons. The upgrades for Monarch's Lance is just that it can shoot more and it does more damage. Pretty useful upgrades if you ask me, especially for the weapon itself. Lastly, you unlock the Atom Splitter. In the nicest possible way, the Atom Splitter is a rocket launcher. However, it is a special type of rocket launcher. You see, you can shoot it once at a time and then it's fully charged up. However, what you get in return for that is a weapon that can essentially mark an entire room of enemies by holding your right click down. Then you get like this targeting screen up that you just drag across enemies and that auto marks them. When they're marked and you then shoot your Atom Splitter, it shoots some missiles up into the air, into the sky, and then they fall down on the enemies, completely destroying them. It is one of the coolest heavy weapons I have ever seen in a game. It is sick. It reminds me a lot of Eyes of Tomorrow from Destiny, except this time I actually don't think it sucks complete ass. Atom Splitter is overwhelmingly strong. It is very obviously meant to be an endgame weapon, and for good reason. It does a lot of damage. It can kill pretty much everything in front of it instantly. Like, it is an insane weapon. And that is pretty much arsenal. You have those 4 weapons in addition to your absorption ability, which essentially is just you finishing an enemy and getting a little bit of health back. And a little bit later in the game you also have the option to turn them into a walking hand grenade, where instead of absorbing them, you just explode them. And then lastly, you have a dodge, which functions exactly how you'd expect. It's a dodge, so you can avoid all of the big bullets and move pretty fast. And while killing normal smaller monsters in Lunar Abyss is fun enough, this game really peaks at the boss fights. I absolutely adore most of them. They're grotesque, they're weird, they're kinda hard sometimes. Like, it is pretty good overall in my own humble opinion. And that's not to say that the normal fights aren't fun. They are fun, but the boss fights, oh my god, I could play that like exclusively. Just give me a game full of boss fights like that. Holy shit, that was so good. A lot of the times they include small mechanics, like there's one that will remove the platforms that you're standing on from underneath you. And keep in mind, while they're doing that, you have to avoid the attacks, so you have to move fast. You often have to do the entire swap thing, where you are swapping between all 3 of your weapons that you will have for most of the game. You'll just be swapping constantly while avoiding bullets, while also doing all of these other things. And then there is like the small mechanic on top of it. Really, really fun. Like, genuinely a lot of fun. And quite frankly, I think it's the designs that pulls a lot of the heavy lifting as well. Like, I like weird, grotesque things. I showed a little bit of the game to a friend of mine, and he was like, yeah, those monsters looks like something you would enjoy. And that is because I am the target audience here. I think making unique and cool looking monsters is incredibly hard, but I think when it's done well and when they fit into the world, it is a wonderful thing. And in Luna Abyss's case, I absolutely adore it. Like, they are really fun most of the time. There are a few stinkers in there, like, there's a boss that is essentially just like a lot of ads gathered together. That's actually quite a few of those where it's like a mini boss, quote unquote, they'll later just become a normal enemy, and I'm not as big of a fan of those. But the actual boss fights, they're really good. And the only reason why I don't like the mini boss fights is just that I think a lot of the coolness of a boss is the fact that they don't appear often. But when you then introduce a mini boss that's gonna be reused a million times going forward, yeah, to me that does take it down a little notch, I'll be completely honest. But it's not something that hurts the game overall, and I still didn't find them completely boring to fight, and I still fought them all. I still enjoyed my time with them. It was just not the thing that stood out to me, whereas the bosses are a glowing, big, outstanding thing for me. Like, I absolutely love them. And it is helped by the fact that, again, I like the story, and the story does continue after you beat each boss with you getting new dialogue and so on. Like, it is interesting enough to make me want to keep going and even read into the world. And lastly, you also do have an ability to put down a shield that is this dome that goes around your character. You can shoot out of the dome, but enemies can't shoot into the dome. This sounds really useful, but honestly I found it to be completely useless, and I don't think I'm the only one, as other people have described just kind of forgetting that it exists. Like, it sounds like a cool idea on paper, but in practice it's just not really all that exciting or interesting or anything like that. However, combat is only one aspect of Luna Abyss though. One of the other big ones is exploration, which I think the game does really well. While you're exploring, you will be doing some platforming where you have to use your dodge. You'll also have some grappling abilities and the ability to create platforms and go into other like wardens, which are all really cool abilities to have. Especially with the wardens having their own different abilities. One of them acts like the rail section from Ratchet and Clank, but in first person. Another one is like a surveillance camera that you can then point around and then jump out from at whatever angle suits you best. And of course you also have a grappling hook, because everybody needs a grappling hook these days. But overall, it's just quite fun, honestly. I really enjoy exploring it. I also really like what they've done with the whole world, where it isn't just a megastructure, which the moon is, but it also has some forests. It also has like a level that is set in a little bit more open space and that sort of thing. It's very varied, and I honestly just really appreciate that. I think it's quite refreshing, especially after a lot of the game does take place in like the insides of these facilities and whatnot, to explore something that isn't just more megastructure. And with the fact that I am an avid Destiny gamer, I do have to say some of the exploration parts, especially early on, reminds me quite a bit of the Whisper mission specifically from Destiny. If you haven't played it, you absolutely should. It's a banger. But it reminds me a lot of that, specifically in the structure with how the Vex in Destiny has these rock formation, like that's almost too perfectly cut out. Yeah, the same exact thing is happening in Luna Abyss. And quite frankly, I don't mind it at all. The entire thing, if I had to describe it in like one sentence, would be Exotic Quest from Destiny. It's quite fun, honestly, and it has a really good vibe. And while you're out exploring, one of the cooler things is that you'll find these lore tabs. A lot of games do that, but once I actually cared enough about the story to read them, like I actually sat down and read the lore tabs, which I'll just be straight honest with you, I might have done that once before in my entire life. I normally just don't find it interesting whatsoever. But in Luna Abyss, because they managed to build a mystery up that's actually intriguing and that's actually fun to figure more out about, I did bother to learn about the world. And that is only helped with the fact that you can meet a few other wardens that were left alive after the cataclysm. And then you can have different conversations with them, find out what their motivations were, what they're doing, and how they're coping with, well, the world kind of ending on the moon. other than the lore tip bits, you do also get red crystals. Red crystals are essentially a little health upgrade, and sometimes they're also an ability. Those abilities, however, aren't like hidden away, they are directly on your path. I think they're quite literally impossible to miss. And then, of course, you do find some weapon upgrades throughout the game, although there aren't a lot of those. But other than that, it is just the lore tabs and like more NPCs you're exploring for, but honestly, that is just fine. Especially because, like I said, I think the world is very interesting. I think it's very unique and varied. Really, really enjoy the megastructure vibe of the entire moon. Like, it is cool. Objectively speaking, in my own humble opinion, it is cool. And that coolness is only added onto by the fact that all of the NPCs that you meet and all of the stories that you get to hear are actually interesting. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the dialogue for like 90% of the game. I think it was really good. I love the shocking reveals later on in the story where you find Aylin's colognes and like all of the experiments that have been done with her. I think it is insanely cool. And I think there has to be such a creative mind behind that. I think it's so fucking sick. I also love the entire reveal of the story, like slowly exploring the megastructure, and then you see more and more of the story as you go and then start to piece a few things together, especially if you read some of the dialogue, lore tabs. Like, it's really genuinely pretty good. And like I said, a lot of it is also carried by the fact that I like megastructures. I think they are super interesting. I think they are heavily underutilized in video games. This game does it right. Like, this game is you exploring a megastructure, and not only is it that, it has an interesting story woven into it, where it's like, yeah, the story takes center place, but I can get to imagine all of the shit that's behind it. It feels very much like playing early Dark Souls and then having the want to go out and explore Analondo when you got there. It's like the same thing, really, because at the end of the day, all I want to do, all my dumbass wants to do, is go out and see more of the world. I think it is so interesting. And I think it is helped by the monster design and all the enemies having their own, like, really grotesque and weird designs. I think this sort of, I haven't seen this for experience. It tends to be really good, and I think it tends to be sort of a thing that draws me in, at least. Like, it makes me go, holy shit, what is around the corner? And that is where I'll also have to admit that the game isn't perfect, of course. I feel like there could be more exploration, there could have been more secrets to find and items to pick up. I think the fact that there are 4 weapons is fine, but I would have loved to seen different upgrade paths for each weapon or something, like really anything to make it into a more interesting experience to explore the world. Because as things are standing, when you aren't picking up red crystals and whatnot, then you're most likely just finding lore tabs, which for me, that is a hook in it of itself because I like the story. But if you don't like the story, the exploration will probably feel a bit dull, since 90% of the time you wouldn't find anything that has any gameplay change on you whatsoever. So I'd have liked to see more, like, in that sense, just more exploration, more stuff to find, shit at armors, let's do something, right, where there would have been more to see. I think that really could have carried the game quite a far away as well, because it's not that all the areas are empty or anything like that, do not get me wrong. It's just that I would have liked there to be more exploration and a bigger focus on it, because I think the game does it really, really well. But one thing is that it has good combat and a fun exploration system. But how about the story? I also really like the fact that every area has its own like little mechanic that they do, something to sort of make it stand out. Like, what are the later areas that you unlock has this weird, almost Ratchet and Clank-ish, like, rail grinding thing where you'll be jumping from rail to rail, which is carried forward into the game. But I like the fact that the game keeps adding new mechanics, constantly having that pace being kept up. It makes it so I'm never really bored. Like, it's not like I have discovered everything that is in the game. Nothing will change the way that I play the game. Now it's just doing the same thing for the next 60 hours. This game is painfully short, but like, in that runtime, it never manages to feel stale because it keeps introducing new stuff, and I think that is a major benefit and one that a lot of games could learn a lot from. The story of Lunar Abyss starts 200 years before you even get to play it, where the red moon shows up. It severely impacts the Earth seismic activity, and that also means there's mass floodings and earthquakes. Sometimes after that, people start to settle on the moon, they start to explore it, and eventually they start to worship the gods of the abyss. It becomes a cult, and it becomes so dominant that a major player within the story called Atticus starts to hate it. Atticus actually hates the church so much that he decides to create a little collective that would then go on to form Fate and rise up and rebel against the church. But Atticus lacks in power. Luckily for him, the Abyss can offer him that power. However, nothing is free. And the gods of the Abyss, specifically Aelin, the god of the above ground side of the Abyss, offers him that power in exchange for his firstborn child, that being his daughter. He accepts that deal, getting immense power including a warden and his giant sword, which is described as a slab of metal. And let's be real, it's a Berserk reference, I mean, come on now. However, after establishing Fate and having that become the major power player on the Red Moon, Atticus realizes that the deal to sacrifice his child probably wasn't that good. He thought that Aelin would just keep her and that she'd be alive, but, well, she dies. So Atticus goes to the other god of the Abyss, that being Mati, the brother of Aelin, and offers him a deal. He will kill Aelin, but he does need Mati's help. Now you might wonder, why would Mati ever agree to help kill his sister? Well, the simple answer is that he's jealous because people are praying to her, not him. And that is because Mati is banished to like the underground areas of the Abyss, whereas Aelin is the above ground god. So Mati does agree, and the way Mati helps Atticus to get more power to kill a god is to put his godhood into a crystal that can sit in the hilt of Atticus's sword, which he can then use to kill Aelin by cutting her head off. Now, cutting her head off, as you might have guessed, creates a few problems. That includes a giant scourge, which the best way I can describe it is almost like a plague that kills people and turns them into monsters. The only people who survive are people in wardens. So what is a warden? Well, a warden essentially acts like another separate body that you can transfer your consciousness to. As you play the game, you will meet multiple different wardens that have lived in their bodies for centuries, as the warden body can survive the scourge, whereas the human body couldn't. It is also hinted at, if not directly confirmed, that all of the enemies that you kill are old people, with the stronger ones being nobles who were on the Red Moon when the Scourge was released, or the Plague, to say it like that, which mutated them into these grotesque creatures that you see. Two of the bosses is literally friends of Atticus who was sealed away so other people couldn't access the core of the Abyss, where there's like an elder god. But why put people's consciousness into a warden, you might ask? Well, other than being resilient, the wardens are also heavily refined with both weaponry, transport capabilities, mining capabilities, and pretty much anything else you can really think of they can do. In a way, you can imagine them like mech suits, except there's no person inside of them. It's more like you transfer your mind to them. However, that might not be as pleasant as you might think, because while yes, they can survive this mass casualty event that is the Scourge, it doesn't mean it's very nice, as things will turn out the human soul might not be built to last forever, and people are losing hope, they're losing pretty much anything that made them human. One of the bosses that seal themselves away and become this like giant monster as well, called Letty, also has this backstory, and I really think it's so brutal. I loved it to a certain extent, where she's essentially Atticus's adopted daughter who would do anything for him, and when you finally defeat her in the boss fight, she asks you if you finally came to get her, you know, came to bring her back to everybody else. But you killed her. It's honestly really fucking heartbreaking. Like, genuinely. All of that brings us to the modern day of Lunar Abyss. You play as Fox, who has been branded a sinner. Now, why is she a sinner? What did she do? Well, she had the misfortune of getting really, really bright red eyes. That means that she can communicate with the Abyss. By getting that, she's sent off to the colony on the Red Moon into the Warden program, which now has taken place, where Atticus, who has renamed himself to Allfather, has tried to rebuild and clone Aelin's consciousness and head and put them in these giant snake-like things that then look at the sinners and put them out for whatever purposes the Allfather could need. You end up siding with Urian, a Allfather hater, and somebody who absolutely thinks he's gone batshit insane, who was also part of the collective, who survived in his cat-like warden. And that is sort of where the game takes place. You go through a bunch of different boss fights, eventually also killing Allfather. However, as the game progresses, things might not exactly be like they seem. You see, the alien models that Allfather creates can't remember anything of their past. They can't remember being a god. But as you go through the game, their memory awakes. And eventually, at the very end of the game, Alien sacrifices you to be reborn in your body is my best interpretation of it. This is the very summarized version of the plot, putting out a lot of the other stuff, but this is essentially like the major plot points of the game. The enemies that you fight in the game, the ones that I described as being sort of mutants, are called Adrift within the game. And while they might seem soulless, there might be a hint that there could possibly be some humanity left there. The one that I want to draw attention to is called the Lady of Manchester, and that's because she is an Adrift who very clearly has a human title, is very sentient, you can speak and talk to her. It's actually really cool in that area where she is. None of the Adrift really seems to attack you for a while. And the Lady of Manchester is also a character that has some of the more interesting dialogue in my opinion, because Lunar Abyss is a class-conscious game. It's very current in that sort of way. And one of the things that I really appreciate about it was really reading those dialogue lines and like all of the sort of lore surrounding the entire society. You see, even when the world is ending, the planet that people have built an entire society on is ending, money still means quite a lot, as the rich would pick their own roles in the societies that they built in the colonies, even though they promised the poor who ended up going to build those colonies a new start, a better ending. But at the end of the day, the societies ended up being equally shitty, with the same inequalities being present in both the normal Earth society and the one on the Red Moon. There's an archive entry as well that I really quite like that essentially describes how rich people were trying to buy their way out of like the Red Moon the second that the Scourge happened. And I can't help but think a little bit about it, right? Like, thank God this game isn't like political at all and it has nothing to say otherwise. This would make me think. But I digress. Lunar Abyss is a very class-conscious game, as you can probably hear within the dialogue. It is not a not political game, so to speak. There's a Adrift that you meet, the only one that you can actually speak to that's completely sentient, and she is called the Lady of Manchester. And not only does she describe how the title The Lady of Manchester was not something that she inherited through nobility that was God given. It was actually just something that she brought with her money. But she also has more interesting lines that I just really like, where she talks about how the rich used to hold these extravagant parties with whoring and all of that stuff that we sort of expect the rich to in the current Epstein class society that we got going on in the real world. And how people would have gotten mad if they found out that they were holding those parties. So instead of calling them parties where they experimented with drugs and everything, they called them rituals to make it seem like they were just a part of the church. They were just trying to communicate with the gods more. Overall, Lunar Abyss is one of those games that just has a really interesting story. I found it really fun to look into and read lore tabs from. And while at times it can be a little confusing, I think the hooks are really strong here and I think they work really, really well. Both from the fact that the story is just legitimately good, but also from the perspective of the fact that they do incorporate the actual gameplay of Lunar Abyss quite a bit into it. And I like the fact that these lore tabs, don't directly give you story necessary like lore, but more so just is used as a way to build up the world. But the one thing that ties this entire game together though, the glue so to speak, is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is not one of those that stands out like the Doom soundtrack, where you pay more attention to that than you almost pay to the game. It is much more of a background type of thing. It is used to set moods and it does that perfectly. A lot of the songs are just also really good. Like, if I heard them outside of Lunar Abyss, I would absolutely listen to them. But when I'm hearing them while playing Lunar Abyss, because of all of the things that are going on screen, it's not like they're gonna become my major focus. That's gonna be the gameplay, even though it isn't necessarily the hardest game in the world. But it doesn't mean that I really don't enjoy the soundtrack. Matter of fact, all music that has been used in this video is the Lunar Abyss OST. I've also left a link to it in the description if you want to go and check it out. But when you aren't out and about in the world shooting up monsters and listening to absolute bangers, then what do you really do? Well, you get transported back to your prison cell, where you can talk with your warden. You can also read some books, which is just the lore tabs that you have collected already, and then you can sleep and go back out. The gameplay loop really is mostly what is happening when you are out and about. That is where things take place. And I think there are also a lot of criticisms here. I think it's very fair to say that they could have done a lot more with like the entire warden and having like a little mini game there type of situation. Like, why exactly do I have the option to just open my menus? Like, we can just sleep at that point, just make it a Dark Souls system. But like, it's not that I'm minded per se, I just think there could have been more done. But I think that is really the story of Kali Labs. Just a studio that could have done so much more, as they are clearly creatively gifted and made a quite good game. But that really brings us to the unfun part of this story. You see, thing is, a month after releasing Lunar Abyss, the entire team at Kali Labs, the developers behind Lunar Abyss, was laid off by the publisher, Kali. Now, there was no official reason given for the layoffs, but it does really genuinely suck, and I think, unfortunately, when no official reason is given, people will speculate, and speculation tends to go in one direction more than the other. So it very quickly became a narrative of the game is woke. Now, where does this entire woke narrative come from? Well, I'll explain it to you real quick. The woke narrative sort of idea starts about, I'd say, 40% through the game when you meet a character where you have the optional dialogue line of saying, I am not a she, I am a they. You have the option, an entirely optional thing where you can decide to have a they-them character if you felt more comfortable with it. You already see where this is headed. People saw that online, and those individuals who really feel strongly about not having that in their game immediately spun this to be a case of the game went woke and got broke or whatever the fuck. This is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard. Now, usually I don't really care about the ongoing things surrounding a game, but I feel like in this case I at least want to talk a little bit about it. Partially because I don't want this to taint anybody's look of like Lunar Abyss, because Lunar Abyss is so fucking cool. And quite frankly, honestly, if you really write off an entire game because somebody has a pronoun you don't agree with, then you are probably a little bit weirder than you would like to give yourself credit for. Lunar Abyss had a 7-year development cycle. That's what you need to understand, 7 years of development. In that time, there wasn't a lot of advertisement done for the game. If you go to the Kali Labs YouTube channel, it's not like Lunar Abyss had a lot of pull. Some of their most popular traders were on the PlayStation YouTube channel, which sits at over 500,000 views, but that's 3 years ago. In the game industry today, where everything moves so fast, if the last time your game really peaked in terms of having eyes on it was 3 years ago, yeah, that does spell out a problem. Not to mention that direct views doesn't always translate directly to revenue. And unfortunately, I think this is a case where the development time exceeded what the final product really was, and at least in terms of sales, what it managed to bring in. And it's really unfortunate because Lunar Abyss, when I saw the initial trailer the very first time, I also just thought it was some Destiny clone looking ass. I think that was what most people saw it as. But it really fucking isn't. And the unfortunate reality is that they had a one trailer which did incredibly well in terms of views and whatnot. People wrote it off then and there, and then it just wasn't really advertised a whole lot after that. It was doomed from the start. The publishers didn't do their fucking job in advertising the game. But of course that couldn't be the issue. The issue is the fact that the game is woke, which is political, and games can be political, and the political aspects of a game can only be the things that I think are bad. Which in this case it's woke and it's the gay agenda. Do you hear yourself? It sounds fucking stupid. Like, my guy, what are we doing here? We want unique and interesting games. This is a game that has, quite frankly, some of the most intensely interesting dialogue I've played in quite a while. And after completing it, I can say I thoroughly enjoyed it. But apparently, the game is super bad because it is woke. And the funniest part of it, the entire thing, is that you can tell none of these fucking troglodytes paid any amount of attention to anything within the story. At the very least, they didn't bother to finish it if they even played it, as there are two characters called Orion and Everett, and they are two men who got trapped into two wardens that have very womanly features, which is to say that they are men trapped in women's bodies. And as if that wasn't enough, like this woke game also have them kissing, but not directly, they were just roommates. At least there you could point to something and then have like somewhat of an argument. But no, that's not what people are doing. People are pointing to the optional line within the game to point to the fact that it's the woke agenda. It's woke and it's disgusting that it's woke. It pisses me off like quite a lot as well. It's even spread to YouTube. But I think the reason why it really pisses me off is that it removes the capability to have an actual adult discussion about the state of the industry and, unfortunately, the state of Lunar Abyss as a whole. Like, it's not like we have people who are level-headedly going at this and talking about it. No. It has to be that the entire game sucks because there's one line I disagree with. I genuinely don't get it. I really don't. I think it's so strange to base your entire perspective of something based on one line of it. And even if we take it out into the broader world, I think it's strange to not just, live and let live. What the fuck do you care what people want to be called? Like, come the fuck on. If there's anybody who's obsessed with pronouns, it's these people who go along meticulously cataloging every time a character uses a pronoun and then sees if they agree or disagree with it. It's fucking weird, dude. Like, what are you doing? And while I don't want to harp on it too much longer, like I said, I think it genuinely does damage the conversation surrounding video games, and it fucking sucks. It really fucking sucks. It's one of those things where I understand when you complain about certain characters being written badly. Dragon Age the Veilguard is the obvious example of a game that I understand why some people look at that and they're like, that is just poor writing. That is piss poor ass writing. But like, you look at a game that has good writing and then you also apply those same things because they have a pronouns for a character you disagree with. That's strange to me, dude. Like, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be the no-lifer here. What the fuck are we doing? And more so than that, I don't, think it's really that big of a deal. Like, if people feel better having a pronoun in their game, then who the fuck am I to be the one to be like, no, you can't have that. I'll take that away from you. It makes no sense, man. It really doesn't. And I think the really unfortunate reality is that Lunar Abyss is yet another studio that made an incredibly interesting game where the publishers failed them yet again, and then they got laid off. They were punished despite making something that actually was pretty interesting. I think a lot of things went wrong with Lunar Abyss's development. I think the first trailer came out simply put too early. I think it looked a little bit too much like Destiny and didn't manage to sell itself on its own merit, which is very unfortunate because there's a lot of merit to be sold on. And I think when they finally corrected that and course corrected, it was just slightly too late, man. But ultimately, I'll let you decide. Maybe you think that it's the woke narrative, that all of this is like the worst thing in the world and we are all being turned gay by the 2070 paradigm shift where the states are gonna have state-mandated gayness. Like, maybe that's what you believe in, and if you do, hats off to you. You go about your day, my friend. But like, as for me, I think Lunar Abyss is a fucking gem. I think it is incredible. It's a game that genuinely makes me want to explore more of it. But unfortunately, I doubt there'll ever be more to explore. Which fucking sucks. My heart goes out to the developers who spent 7 years putting together what I consider one of the most unique shooters I have played in a long time. I hope other developers see the entirety of Lunar Abyss, and they don't get scared away. I hope some people take some inspiration into making something that is kind of like it. I really thoroughly enjoyed my time with Lunar Abyss, and I can't do anything except recommending it to anybody who found anything that I talked about interesting. Like, if any of the gameplay, any of the story, anything looked interesting to you, for the love of God, go and give it a try. The game genuinely deserves the world, right? Like, it really does deserve to be put on a bit of a pedestal, especially because it was a smaller team that developed that. But also just the fact that it's really good and it manages to keep up that pace for its entire runtime. I fucking appreciated it. But yeah, that's about it. I won't be yapping on anymore. If you're interested in things like the soundtrack, I've linked it in the description. I think it's really good. You can go and give it a listen if you really feel like it. If you don't, that's fair. This is also the first video that has been cross-posted between my two channels. A new one is gonna be mainly focused on these longer discussions of games, whereas my normal channel, the one that I post to weekly, is still just gonna be me posting the things that I find interesting. So if you're interested in, well, either of them, or you just want to hear me more, then go to my old channel. If you just want to hear more of these videos, you can subscribe to the new one. Anyway, I'd really appreciate it if you did the YouTube stuff. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you all have a really good day. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. And for the love of God, if you get the chance, try out Lunar Abyss.